Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of three. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you are notified every week with my new podcasts on Mondays and Tuesdays. And if you haven't already, join my free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. There's no downside. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health, and you will be a part of a like-minded group to support you on your journey, in addition to truly taking control of your health. The protocols and supplements we discussed today are all found at sarabantahealth.com. I'm so excited to have our guest back, Chris Burres. He's so much fun, and we always have an awesome talk. He is the owner of SES Research, the first company to deliver carbon nanomaterials, and MyVitalC, the world's first nano antioxidant. Welcome, Chris. How are you today?
Wonderful, Sara. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I just took my MyVitalC as right before the show.
You know, I should take a little bit too. It's been kind of a long day, and I have a friend in town, so it'll be a long evening. Not like it sounds. It won't be. He doesn't drink. It won't be that kind of evening, but it'll probably be a long night.
Well, we are talking about the ultimate longevity health plan and getting into longevity, and that's a word that's thrown around. At the age of 47, I'm looking at my kids growing up, getting out of the house eventually. I want to have a life after they leave. I want to be physically fit. I want to have the energy that they have in their 20s. So I am not just about getting rid of chronic disease, but I am about reversing the age and feeling better as we age. So this is a topic that I selfishly love. So let's get into it. What is the definition of longevity? What do you think of when you think of longevity?
When I think of longevity, and I'm frankly in a transition, and I think certainly a small part of our society is in a transition, and that part of our society is growing every day. And that transition is longevity and aging, right? Aging meaning getting older. Like aging has such a strong connotation of living infirmed that you can't even really say aging if you mean being healthy and living longer, right? Like you don't say aging if you're implying that I'm going to live healthy, I'm going to continue to hike and exercise and spend time with my kids and travel. If you say aging, you almost are saying the opposite of that. That's like getting old and living infirmed. And I think that's in a transition, and I'm excited about that transition, and excited that because of my product, I'm involved in that transition. But it is a big shift. If you look at, there's a book by Dr. David Sinclair. He's a professor at University of Harvard Medical School. He's not a physician, but he's a professor there, a researcher. And he's got a book called Lifespan. And that book really is, it's a fascinating book. It's 25 years of research into what is causing aging, really from a very fascinating perspective. A lot of the research is actually on yeast, and they can track the genetic material in yeast that they're playing around with all the way through to us, right? So it's the same components that are aging the yeast that are actually aging us. And they've proved in multiple animal models, more sophisticated animal models than yeast, that these tricks that they're working on are having a positive impact on aging. The entire book is not only kind of a discourse on his 25 years of research into aging, but it's also a plea to the medical community to stop thinking of aging as inevitable. And part of his logic for this is the main diseases that we consider to be really the diseases that ultimately will affect all of us are diseases of aging. And you're talking about heart conditions, you're talking about Alzheimer's, you're talking about arthritis. If and each of those currently, because aging isn't defined as a medical condition, each of those currently has to fight for dollars in separate kind of categories. And how beneficial would it be? Because if you could solve the overlying or underlying consideration of aging, then you would have positive impacts on arthritis, on cardiovascular disease, on Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. So if you could just take those $3, we're not suggesting by any means those diseases are less important. We're just saying we might be able to address all three of those faster if we look at aging as a disease. So a lot of his book is really lobbying for the medical community and probably the political community to look at aging as a disease, and now we can start to address it. Now, I mean, just think of the implications there. We're talking about aging as a fact and shifting off and aging with all its negative connotations and shifting that concept from, hey, maybe this isn't a fact. Maybe we don't just have to accept this. Maybe we can start addressing aging and then have these significant other improvements. We could talk a little bit about the study associated with our molecule. The rats live 90% longer, and I share that study with a lot of people, and I get a surprising reaction. And I probably shared this with you, but I think it's worth sharing again, where some people say, well, why would I want to live longer? And I don't really subscribe to that thought process. I've always wanted to, whatever, I got a target in my head, probably when I was 14 or 15, that I wanted to live to 125. Now, if I'm honest, that was aging to 125, right? That was not living to 125. That had, probably a walker, probably oxygen tanks, for, eking across that finish line and be like, I made it and then done. And that vision has changed substantially for me because of what's going on in this industry. And so that was kind of a long piece, but I think that's kind of where we sit with longevity and aging.
Well, a couple things you said. Number one, I love what you're talking about is, do we really have to age? I've talked to a woman who believes that menopause is not a real thing, that we don't have to even go through menopause. Well, if we're not aging, then there's no menopause, right? So just throwing it out there. Haven't done my own research on it, but it's funny that those beliefs are out there. But when you look at aging, I have zeroed it in down to two things: toxicity and insulin resistance. And inflammation and oxidative stress are byproducts of those two. So those four things are the things that, if you look at chronic disease and all the things that you just talked about, whether it was heart disease, arthritis, diabetes, let's take care of the root problem. And all of these symptoms, which are the diseases that Western medicine is treating separately, they can go away. So a lot of times when people come to me with arthritis or heart disease or diabetes, the protocol I give them is the same, because it's essentially attacking detoxification, reducing inflammation, reducing oxidative stress, and reducing insulin resistance. And fatty liver disease is something that did not exist before 1980 in anyone that was not an alcoholic. And now it is affecting everyone. I believe it's truly the pandemic that we are experiencing. And insulin resistance is caused by fatty liver. It's insulin resistance at the level of the liver. So where's that coming from? The processed foods, the high fructose corn syrup, the seed oils. So that's just from the diet aspect. That's accelerating the aging, accelerating oxidative stress, inflammation, insulin resistance, and toxicity, all four of those things. So I want to get into the rat study again for those who have not heard you talk about it. And where does MyVitalC come into play with tackling these 4 things that I just mentioned: insulin resistance, toxicity, oxidative stress, and inflammation?
Yeah, well, yeah. Let's jump in. There's a lot of really good stuff there. So let's talk about the molecule. So we call this molecule ESS60. It was discovered in 1985 here in Houston. That's where I'm based, at Rice University. The 3 scientists who discovered the molecule and published a paper in the illustrious Nature magazine won a Nobel Prize. Right? Not that having a publication in Nature is not amazing enough. They actually won the Nobel Prize for the discovery. Now, this story has a little couple of ups and downs, right? And yes, it is a supplement, and yes, the next 2 things might make you nervous. 2 things that I'm going to say. So, one, this molecule, the reason it won a Nobel Prize is because it is an amazing industrial molecule. It performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. It makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, and better photocells. That's often where people get nervous. They're like, wait, this stuff you put in batteries and tires and photocells? No, I probably don't want to consume it. Which, by the way, in the actual story of us bringing this to market, my business partner and I didn't advocate consuming this for that exact reason. The literature was clear that it was safe, but really in our mind, we're like, well, this is inks, batteries, tires, and photocells. Like, this is not for consumption. Because it was such an amazing material, kind of the scientific community and engineering community more specifically thought that we would be working with this material on a regular basis. And so they whenever you're working with a material, you've got to understand if it's toxic, right? Do we need to wear masks when we're working with it? Do we need to wear gloves when we're working with it? Does it have any asbestos-like attributes? And they did, for various reasons, think that the molecule, the molecule, I'm holding up this model. If you're just listening, imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. You have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. It's the first closed cage molecule. It's the first molecule that actually has a void in the middle of it. And it turns out that void is big enough for any atom on the periodic chart to fit inside of it. Kind of a little segue here. You've won, that you're probably going to win a Nobel Prize when they add a new symbol in chemistry because of your discovery. So the @ symbol, we're familiar with it in our emails, is now part of chemistry. Prior to this buckyball, it was not in chemistry. And if you take C60, so that's 60 carbon atoms, so C60, lanthanum at C60 means a lanthanum atom physically trapped inside of that closed cage molecule, that soccer ball shaped molecule. So it's not covalently bonded or ionically bonded to the exterior. It's just physically trapped inside of it. So the first molecule, they've discovered others since, but the first molecule where you could do that. So for various reasons, they thought this molecule would be toxic. They put it in a toxic, and when they thought we would be working with it on a regular basis, so they put it in a toxicity study. And in that study, they gave test subjects. In this case, it was Wistar rats. They gave them water, olive oil, and then olive oil with this molecule, again, ESS60. Instead of being toxic, the test subject that they gave the olive oil with ESS60, really the MyVitalC formula, lived 90% longer than the control group. And if 90% longer sounds like a big number, it is. It's huge. It's the single longest longevity experimental result in history. The next best way to live longer is kind of abbreviated CR. It's calorie restriction. It's well documented that if you reduce your calorie consumption by 30%, you can extend your life by 30%. I call that the starve yourself 1/3 to death diet. No one seems to sign up for that diet.
Right.
Maybe they need some marketing guidance, right? They need a PR campaign. But that's the next best way to live longer. You're talking about starving yourself 1/3 to death and living 30% longer. And then the next thing on the map with peer-reviewed published research. Now, it's not on humans, right? So we've got a ways to go. This is still a cutting-edge molecule, but you've got the single longest longevity experimental result in humans ever. And just as a side note, none of the rats in the study died with any tumors. None of the MyVitalC rats died with any tumors. So just kind of lay that out. A typical Wistar rat lives 32 months and they have a known amount of tumors. The longer they live, the more tumor mass they have in their body. Even though the MyVitalC rats lived out to 62 months, none of them had any tumors in their body. So it's really phenomenal. And if you think of tumors, one of your thought processes is inflammation, and we're about to talk about that. Address how we can and can't say that we address inflammation. But that's kind of the long and short of how we ended up here. Really, my company, my lab, was the company that provided the original material to that original study. It was out of the University of Paris, peer-reviewed, published paper, and were mentioned in that original study. We are the foundation of this industry, and it's really exciting and maybe daunting to be responsible for sharing this with as many people as possible, which I'm very thankful, Sarah, that you allow me to do.
I love this supplement. I've been introduced to so many since I've started it, and you would think that it would be replaced, right, with something better and more cutting edge. And I take it on a daily basis. I love it. I, of course, use the skin and the hair products as well. So how does MyVitalC fit into your philosophy on longevity terminal velocity?
Ooh, terminal velocity.
This is a term that you threw out that is not really out there. People are probably thinking, what? What are you talking about? Longevity terminal velocity.
Or the terminal velocity of longevity. So I love this concept. Let's break it down into two pieces. The first piece is, what is kind of my perspective of MyVitalC and how it sits in longevity in general, right? Responsible, it's MyVitalC, the formula is responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result in history. It took me a while because I am a conservative carbon nanomaterial scientist before I even I really should be taking this. I just really should be taking this. My business partner and I really kind of avoided the supplement industry for various reasons. Like there's challenges in the you're aware there's challenges in the supplement industry, and I'm just going to throw this out there. Maybe one of the biggest challenges is just where Amazon sits in the supplement industry, right? People think that they can hear of a new supplement, ESS 60. By the way, our products are out there, and ESS 60 is really kind of a name that we own. So if you go onto Amazon and search ESS 60, then it's going to be good. By the way, you should be getting them from Sara because we give Sara good deals, and she passes those on to you. So think about what it means for somebody to go on, and this is why you should use Sara, because Sara vets these things. Go onto Amazon and go, oh, I'm going to get this kind of revolutionary new molecule, and I'm just going to type ESS 60, and there's going to be 5 stars out there. Well, what does a 5-star review of a supplement on Amazon mean? And I like this kind of exercise of, if it's vitamin C, let's say it's 90 tablets of 1 gram of vitamin C, right? What do we think is true about a 5-star review? Well, one thing that we know is probably not true is they didn't weigh each tablet and make sure on a scientific scale that it's 1 gram, right? Like that didn't happen. They probably didn't even count the tablets. If it said 90 tablets in it and it wasn't empty, they were like, there's probably 90 tablets in there. They certainly didn't crush it up and take it to their HPLC. That's a high performance liquid chromatography piece of scientific equipment. We actually have multiple units here. They didn't take it and put it in their HPLC and confirm that they have ascorbic acid. Like none of that happens. I kind of jokingly say a 5-star review about a supplement on Amazon means that Amazon harassed them enough to leave a review before they died. Right? Like whether it's of old age or whether it's of the supplement. And I'm going to say, if you're going to consume something, you really need to do the legwork and do the research, or at least find somebody who you trust who's willing to do that legwork.
Well, Chris, I want to stop you there for just a second and get back on track when I finish. Is that I'm experiencing that with one of my products, Accelerated Keto, which I've been a little out of stock. And why am I out of stock? Because we are getting our raw materials from these companies that are selling the raw materials individually to the consumer. And we test it for bacteria and mold. And 5 out of the 6 of one ingredient has not passed our high standards.
Yeah.
But the companies are fine with it because it's past a much lower threshold for bacteria and mold. And you wonder why everybody's sick, because we have these lowered immune systems. You're taking supplements you think are healthy for you, and they're full of mold and bacteria because you just trust that companies are doing the right thing, and they're not. And we are keeping our standards extremely high because that is my reputation. And yes, people are knocking down my door for accelerated keto at the moment, but I'm not going to give you a product that is substandard. And that is another layer of why you don't trust Amazon, because they're not even a supplement company. So wanted to reaffirm what you're saying there, but continue.
Yeah, no, and just to, you really do need to do the research. I have a lot. It's painful as a business owner to go like, you know what? I've got this product, but the raw ingredients that somebody gave me don't meet my standards, and so now I can't even sell the product. Like that hurts your bottom line. But it's just a testament to you about like now you should have more confidence in the other things that you're selling, right? Because you're willing to forego profits for the health, well, one, for yours, because I know you take them, and two, for your listeners and your customers. I mean, that's really you don't hear that very often. And I can tell you, in the industry that we really created, there are people who sell industrial C60 dissolved in oil. And we tested like 22 of the brands that are out there. And there was only one brand that had in it what they said they had in the concentration that they said. Now, and I don't know where you sit on this. I'm a very altruistic person. I like to believe that these people who have these products on the market don't know that. I mean, they should know, right? It's bad. It's really, really bad that they don't know. But I'd rather believe they don't know that, I don't know, there's mold in it, or that there's a low concentration of what they're promising to the consumer. I'd rather believe that they, tested one batch one time 5 years ago and just assume that the same manufacturing process makes the same concentration. And that's not always true, right? There's variables that happen: temperature, pressure, especially kind of in my industry. Olive oils are different every batch. So you got to keep an eye on that. So, yeah, I just want to reaffirm, like it really does make a difference. You've got to go and do the research, or find people that you trust and lean on them, because we just don't have all day to identify the best products. I got to be honest, like I don't think you do, and that's why people use the Amazon shortcut. But I think you use that shortcut at your peril.
Right.
So longevity, right? MyVitalC sits at the pinnacle. I think there are some other studies in like fruit flies where the fruit flies lived a lot longer, like maybe 1,000%. Though that didn't translate into animal models. We're literally talking about a mammal. I love this piece of data. Rats have more genetically in common with humans than they do with mice, right? And I like to share that because our intuitions about where animals sit in the kingdom relative to us aren't necessarily true. Like you look at them and like those have to be closer to each other than to us, and it's just not true. So it's one of the reasons you look for studies in more animal models, and that's coming up. There's lots of studies, and in fact, we're going to talk about in well, potentially, if we get to it, we may not get to it, about some improvements of our molecule in the pancreas markers that are indicated with type 1 diabetes. It happens to be in rats also. So we've got this kind of longevity focus. So now I'm digging in, and I really feel obligated to understand where my product fits in this market, right? And this is a lot of research. It's a lot of reading. I can share some of the sources. One of the sources is that Lifespan book by Dr. David Sinclair. Just amazing book. I geek out on it. The science is amazing in that book. 25 years of a Harvard medical researcher. There's Lifespan, which is actually with Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis, I think. It's a thick book. It's a wonderful book. You've got Dr. Gundry out there. You've got Ben Greenfield. There's a lot of these biohackers. Ben Greenfield's certainly cutting edge, right? But you've got a lot of these pieces of literature that people are talking about. How do we hack our existing human biology for optimal performance? And the long-term goal is, how do we live a health span, right? A longer health span. I don't know if Dr. Gundry is the one who coined that phrase, but I do love what he says. He says, I want you to die young at a very old age, right? And I think that's what we all aspire for. And that's part of that transition. So, and I think I've read the phrase before. It was kind of highlighted in Life Force, which is the book with Tony Robbins, where they talked about the longevity the terminal velocity of longevity. So we understand that medical science has gotten better at keeping us alive. It's gotten marginally better at keeping us healthy in old age, right? Like, it's not doing a great job in the latter years. It seems, unfortunately, to kind of prolong us living in a state that we don't necessarily want to live in. So we're still alive, but we'd rather be in a healthier condition. Each day that goes by, medical science gets a little bit better at keeping us alive longer and healthier longer. And at some point, every day that passes, the medical community will be able to extend our life for a day and, let's say, 1 second. And the second that happens, you've reached a terminal velocity of longevity, where at that point, we start rolling in and rolling out the medical technology that keeps us alive potentially forever, right? At some point, and this is something I do believe because of the research that I've been doing, at some point, there will be the last person to die of aging, to die of old age. What a horrible person that will be to be, right? You will have had a good life, but and people will continue to perish, right? Like, we're not gonna have cures for airplane crashes and bus crashes, and there are things that are gonna take people out, but to just not die of old age, and in fact to have a healthier span. And maybe we need to think in terms of two things, right? The terminal velocity of longevity, where the medical community is able to keep us alive, and then the terminal velocity of a healthy lifespan, right? Where not only is the medical community keeping us alive, but we're also healthy. And it's just a really exciting concept.
It is. That's assuming that you're eating, not eating the standard American diet, and the high fructose corn syrup and the processed foods that accelerate our aging. So you've got these two forces. I feel like there's going to be this big divide of population of the ones that are dying earlier, because in the United States, the mortality rate of the age is much earlier than it was previously, which has never happened before. And that's due to the toxicity, the insulin resistance, all of the diseases that we've talked about. And you've really piqued my interest with this new study about the pancreas. The pancreas, so I'm talking about insulin resistance, which is more type 2 diabetes, but obviously involves the pancreas, and any disease in the pancreas, or reversing of that disease, can, I would assume, also have benefit for most people who are insulin resistant, pre-diabetic, or diabetic with type 2. But the study, you said, is more geared to type 1. So let's go over the new study with MyVitalC and type 1 diabetes.
Yeah, and this particular paper, the authors are out of Brazil, and it's in Brazil Pharmaceutical is the magazine. So it's the pharmaceutical publication, just the Brazilian version of it. It's in English. I didn't have to translate it, so good thing, because my Portuguese is not good at all. Although actually my director of research is Brazilian, so Brazilian by way of Venezuela. So his parents are Brazilian and then grew up sometime in Venezuela. But so I could have leaned on him. And I just kind of typed up this short summary, right? So the study looked at how fullerene nanoparticles, a type of antioxidant that we're familiar with because we've just been talking about it, might help rats with type 1 diabetes. The scientists made the rats diabetic by giving them a certain injection, and I've got the long phrase. It really ends up being called diabetes mellitus. When they divided the rats into 4 groups: normal treated with fullerenes, diabetic, and diabetic treated with fullerenes. They gave the fullerenes to the treated group, and that's ESS 60, right? Fullerenes are ESS 60. And there's a kind of cool history about the name fullerene, but we could probably jump into that another time. So they gave the ESS 60 to the treated groups every day for 60 days. They found out that the injection made the rats' blood sugar levels rise, right? Made them eat and drink more, and made them lose weight. It also changed some health markers in their pancreases, but the fullerene, again, ESS 60, helped to bring these changes back to normal. This suggests that ESS 60 might help reduce diabetes symptoms because of its antioxidant properties. Now, I pulled out a lot of the scientific jargon in that, but it's pretty exciting, right? And frankly, there's just continue to be paper after paper showing that ESS 60 is having positive effects on the places that they test it, not showing any negative side effects. And we're actually doing studies to really cement if there's any kind of what's the right word, FDA person out there who is like, hey, you got to do this particular study. We're already doing those studies. In fact, one of them is about to be published. We're publishing it with the lead researcher on the original paper where the test subjects live 90% longer, test subjects given our material. So we're really excited about that. But anyway, this is just one of the studies that came out pretty recently.
So another thing that you mentioned before we came on was that it fits in the same receptor site as the spike protein. Now, as we're talking about this, I always say, I don't care what side of the argument you are on, if you have been, if you contracted the virus at some point or not, or how you got it, we have all been infiltrated with that spike protein in our body.
Exposed, for sure.
Yes. And I kind of liken it to the fact, because I personally can tell you that I feel like if I go to a party or the market and I'm with people that are healthy, no one has any symptoms, but my body gets exposed and I feel fine going home, but I have all of these symptoms like water retention, unexplained weight gain, inflammation that has no explanation. These signs and symptoms are just of my body saying, oh, I recognize that. This is my response to it. It's kind of like when you are exposed to chicken pox after you had it as a child and you're exposed to someone else with the virus, then your body says, oh yeah, I remember what that is. I'm going to boost my immune system. I'm going to have this reaction. I may not get chicken pox again, but I'm going to have this reaction. So what we're seeing is that the ACE2 inhibitor or enzyme in the liver is being affected. And what symptoms people are seeing is insulin dysregulation, fluid retention, inflammation, fibrosis, hormone issues. My goodness, I can tell you, my girls in my own home, the teenagers, their PMS symptoms have gotten so much worse to the point where now I've come up with a protocol to reverse those horrible symptoms. But all of these things, increased oxidative stress and inflammation. So not doing anything different, not changing your diet, your exercise, your sleep, your stress, nothing different. You're having these unexplained responses. So when you told me that MyVitalC, the molecule fits in that same receptor site, I went to, aha, because this is a concept called competitive inhibition. And I talk about it with my iodine. Go back to iodine, go back to chemistry class. Well, iodine is in the halogen family. It's got the heaviest molecular weight. It has to have a whole bunch of it in your body to displace the higher molecules or atoms, which are fluoride, bromide, and chloride, right? So there's this theory of competitive inhibition, and all of you in chemistry are sitting there understanding what I'm talking about, and you that are not are racking your brains going, I failed chemistry 20, 30 years ago. But the concept is that if you have enough of the good thing in your body, it's not going to let the bad thing take its place or fit in that receptor site. So with that, can you explain what you've discovered?
Well, and yes, and to kind of maybe add something that may resonate with your audience when you're talking about, okay, you're at the market, you're exposed to all sorts of things, right? Whether it's just the regular, whatever, regular yearly flu, or it's just the common cold, or it's some sort of bacteria. We've all had that sense like, ooh, I feel like I'm getting sick, and then not gotten sick, right? And you're just kind of describing it, but some of this kind of tends to last longer, right? And hair loss is one of the things that came out of a lot of this, and really, when you think about hair loss, you think about maybe nails growing slower, or actually not growing, or not looking as healthy. They're kind of the last on the bottom rung of what your body needs to focus on. If your body's fighting something internally, it's like, well, the hair is for attractiveness. We just don't need to worry about that right now. We want to live first, and then you get that all organized, and then you're like, okay, let's go back to looking attractive. Like that's typically the approach, and we do get a lot of hair testimonials, and that's exactly what we think is going on, is that there's helping some fundamental underlying challenges, and then now that those are managed or mitigated, now we can have get back focused on the hair. So that's one. When you're talking about what is it, competitive displacement, right? I'm not familiar with that particular phrase. I like it makes perfect sense, and is extremely applicable. Let's go back to 1991, right? That's actually when we started the lab and started manufacturing this molecule, way back in 1991. Molecule was discovered in 85. They started making macroscopic quantities that we could actually hold and study, really in, it was probably 89, 90. And then we started the company in 91. Pretty quickly, one of the things that they started doing, that was really at the peak of the AIDS epidemic. And so just devastating disease, wiping out communities, whether it's overseas, like still a big problem in Africa, or whether it's here in, it's not that it targeted the gay community, that it just spread early in the gay community. And one of the things that came out pretty early is the presence of this ESS60 molecule would actually fit in one of the proteins necessary for the AIDS virus to replicate. And by fitting into that cup, basically, then it could no longer replicate. So it was actually defeating the AIDS virus. It was really early days. There are other kind of medicines that have come on the market and are doing a really good job in that arena. Same thing with the spike protein, right? And so I think what you're saying is whether you've decided to go mRNA in order to get exposure to the spike protein, or whether you're actually getting infected, you've got some exposure to that spike protein, and it turns out that there's some. I love the phrase. It's in silico studies, right? So you have in vivo, which means in a real live person. In vitro, which really means in a petri dish, and in silica means on a computer. So there's computer models that show that the ESS60 molecule fits in the same receptor of our cells that spike protein attaches to gain entry into the cells. And you're right, that competitive displacement, you can imagine if all of those receptors, by the way, probably not a good strategy because those receptors also serve other purposes. But if all, you can imagine if all of those receptors were filled with an ESS60 molecule, then there's no way that spike protein could get into the cell, no way it could replicate from getting into that cell. So that competitive displacement we do understand is plausible and possible, certainly from that kind of in silico study, which is I don't know, all of this stuff is pretty amazing.
Well, and that also speaks to the fact that it stops the cytokine storm that with any, as we're trying to talk in code here. So just wanted to mention that I know that I don't miss I take it every single day. And I've got one of my very best friends, and in best friend way, she will always say, Sarah, I don't have enough money to afford you. And so I have to give her things in priority according to her budget. And I said, you've got to try the MyVitalC. She has horrible plantar fasciitis, and she loves to walk 8 miles a day, which is her number one problem. She shouldn't be walking that much every day and getting herself to lifting some weights, but that's another story. She will spend every dollar she has on MyVitalC because it has taken away her plantar fasciitis pain. And, same with the hair growth that I've seen. Hair loss is blowing up on TikTok and trending because so many people are suffering from hair loss. That was one of the first things I noticed when I started MyVitalC was my hair was growing back. And that's not even including the hair growth kit that is MyVitalC
available. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got about 9 minutes left. I want to make sure we also touch on inflammation. So we've touched on insulin resistance and possibly the help with helping with the liver and the pancreas have no firm connection with insulin resistance, but my mind goes to if it's affecting the pancreas in a positive way, it's affecting blood sugar, liver health probably, and inflammation in general. Fatty liver probably is helping cleanse or helping with that as well. It's helping with the oxidative stress we've talked about. But inflammation.
Yeah. So let's tackle a couple things real quick. One of the points you made early on was that toxic, taking care of toxins. Um, uh, Activated charcoal, we're just really familiar, really good at taking care of toxins. The challenge is big molecules, it's big crystals. That doesn't get into our system to manage any sort of toxicity. It stays in our stomach and just goes through our system. So we know that this molecule actually gets into the mitochondria. So it actually gets in at a subcellular level. It is carbon. It is kind of a magnet. It can hold up to 6 negatively charged electrons, which is what causes it to be a great antioxidant. So we think it operates differently than other antioxidants. So I just want to throw kind of toxicity out there. Liver. It's interesting that you mentioned in the original study. So this goes back to the study published in 2012 out of the University of Paris. My director of research said that paper could have been 5 separate papers, right? And the first 3 that come off the top of my mind are a longevity paper, a paper about tumor growth, or lack of tumor growth, and then actually an oxidative stress report where they injected the rats with carbon tetrachloride, which is a poison. The rats that were in the water group and the olive oil group did not recover from that injection. And actually the way they test the way they're looking for any sort of recovery is by looking at the livers, at the condition of the liver. The rats that were given really the MyVitalC formula did recover, right? So you talk about having a positive impact on the liver. We're there, right? And that's addressing oxidative stress in the liver. When we think about inflammation, there's the FDA, and this is really wholly true And I wish it were I wish it were more nuanced. But the FDA says if you're talking about inflammation, you're talking about disease, right? It's just a fact that you're talking about it. It's not like you're talking about hydration and then hydration has other things. It's like if we're talking about inflammation, we're almost inherently talking about Alzheimer's or arthritis or cardiovascular disease. We're talking about these acute things. So we're not able yet. We have more research to do to talk about inflammation as it relates to inflammation in general. What we can talk about is like your friend who walks 8 miles a day feels inflamed on a regular basis because that's a long distance to be walking. We've all had a tough workout. If it's exercise induced inflammation, then the FDA allows us to talk about improving that inflammation. So, and I like to throw in, we fit very naturally in an anti-inflammatory diet. That's the diet associated with blue zone people who tend to live longer, people who tend to have reduced incidences of stroke, people who tend to have reduced incidences of heart attacks. We fit in with the diet that they're known for. I do want to throw in just real quick our disclaimer, right? The FDA has not evaluated our product. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. I think that's a legal requirement, and I think it's the correct thing to share with the audience in general.
Yeah. I love this. I can tell you that I am more adamant about taking my MyVitalC every single day. And just before we go, Chris, I am so happy that we've met each other and that we've been on this journey. And I love what you're doing. I also love to tell people that you are not a supplement person, as you mentioned earlier on. And it's just so interesting how life throws things at you in the way they have. I am a supplement person. And of course, when we're talking about longevity, diet is important, anti-inflammatory diet, focusing on that wild animal protein, getting rid of the standard American diet, the processed foods, the high fructose corn syrup. Get them out of your diet now. We are salmon swimming upstream with the toxicity and the environmental toxins and what we're surrounded with. We have to be taking care of our bodies in a different way than we ever had before. I also want to mention, when you want to live longer, acceleradine, iodine, acceleradine, acceleradine, acceleradine. Why? It increases ATP production by 18 times, and it displaces all of those toxins that Chris and I have been talking about, and the heavy metals and the radiation. We are being bombarded by this level of radiation and toxicity that we've never experienced before. The iodine is a great supplement to work synergistically with the MyVitalC into detox and then feed your thyroid and all 100 trillion cells with the proper and needed iodine and that competitive inhibition. So that is where that would be the number one supplement I would recommend in addition to the MyVitalC for longevity. And then, of course, you can throw in the accelerated keto, intermittent fasting, and that is an easy way to do caloric restriction, right? So you're not starving as you're trying to live a longer life, and make sure you are taking care of your thyroid. Most people in the last 3 years have turned Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism, and that's why we've come out with the accelerated thyroid to work with the acceleradine iodine to feed the thyroid, heal the thyroid. It's enhanced with scalar frequencies to actually detox the thyroid from the radiation and the heavy metals. And you can also use the accelerated cellular detox powder that soaks up all the toxins. It does have the activated charcoal in there, but it also has zeolite and triphala and some other binders that are very gentle. So it's and it's micronized, so it's the molecules are much smaller. So I just wanted to mention those as we are all trying to live longer, but with a much better quality of life as we live into our 150 years old. And we just hope the world doesn't go crazy so that we actually want to live in this world, right, Chris?
Oh, I don't know. That may be so there have to be people out there who's like, Yeah, you know what? Living longer, I can see that happening. Yeah, you know, a 90% extension of life would get us to 152, but to not have a crazy world, I don't know if that's
Exactly.
happening. By the
Well,
way, I do take iodine. I have your iodine on my desk, and I'm regularly adding it to my water. So great stuff.
amazing. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, everybody. If you are interested in learning more about MyVitalC, you can check it out at SaraBantaHealth.com. I've had Chris on the show as well a few times, so make sure you check those out. And if I can help you directly, you can contact me through the website, SaraBantaHealth.com. Happy to put together a protocol for you. What'd you learn today? Are you aging fast? Have you slowed down your aging? How old do you feel? Leave a comment below. Let us know what you're struggling with, and if you have any questions for Chris or I. And join my free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. There's no downside. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health, and you will be a part of a like-minded group. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products, and across over 100 channels under Accelerated Health TV and radio show. Use coupon WELCOME10 for 10% off site-wide. And thanks. Have a great week.